Despite centuries of prophetic warnings and royal reforms, archaeological evidence shows that ancient Israelites continued worshiping multiple deities right up until the Babylonian exile. Why? The answer isn't spiritual rebellion. It's practical religion meeting real human needs. I'm Dr. Michael Harrison, and I'm about to show you evidence that completely changes how we understand ancient Israelite religion. The persistence of polytheistic practices wasn't about ignorance or unfaithfulness, it was about survival, community, and the deep human need for diverse forms of divine connection. Here's what the archaeological record reveals. In every Israelite settlement, alongside evidence of Yahweh worship, we find household shrines, female figurines, and ritual objects associated with other deities. These aren't hidden away in secret. They're integrated into domestic spaces, showing that multi-deity worship was normal, accepted, and widespread. The female figurines are particularly revealing. Found in thousands of Israelite homes, these represent goddess traditions that provided what Yahweh worship initially couldn't. Fertility blessings, protection in childbirth, and feminine divine presence. For ordinary families, these weren't competing religions. They were complementary approaches to different life challenges. Archaeological excavations at sites like Lachish, Beersheba, and Jerusalem reveal standardized domestic religious practices. Every household had areas dedicated to ritual activities that included both Yahweh worship and goddess traditions. The material culture shows this was systematic, not sporadic. Consider the practical reality. You're an ancient Israelite farmer. Your livelihood depends on successful harvests, healthy livestock, and family continuity. Yahweh might protect your nation in battle, but when your wife is in labor, you want the mother goddess present. When your crops need rain, you invoke both the storm god Yahweh and the fertility goddess Asherah. This wasn't theological confusion. It was religious pragmatism. The biblical texts themselves preserve evidence of this religious diversity. When prophets condemn goddess worship, they're not describing ancient errors. They're fighting ongoing practices. When kings like Josiah destroy Asherah poles, they're not removing foreign influences. They're suppressing indigenous traditions. The inscriptions at Kuntilet Ajrud and Khirbet el Qom show that even official religious practice included divine partnerships. Yahweh and his Asherah wasn't heretical. It was standard blessing formula. The archaeological evidence shows that Asherah worship continued in Israel for centuries, integrated with, rather than opposed to, Yahweh worship. This explains why the transition to exclusive monotheism was so gradual and contested. You weren't just asking people to stop worshiping other gods. You were asking them to abandon religious practices that had provided meaning, comfort, and practical benefits for generations. The genius of the biblical editors was recognizing this problem and creating solutions. They preserved stories of divine warriors, loving fathers, and protective presences within Yahweh worship. They developed angelology to fill roles once played by minor deities. They created ritual practices that addressed the same human needs that had driven polytheistic worship. Archaeological evidence shows that religious reform was a top-down process that never completely succeeded at the grassroots level. The Ketef Hinnom scrolls, containing the oldest biblical text found archaeologically, show that even elite religious practice maintained elements from diverse traditions. The archaeological evidence shows that even after the exile, when exclusive monotheism became official policy, folk practices continued to include elements from goddess traditions. The religious leaders didn't eliminate these needs. They channeled them into acceptable forms within a monotheistic framework. This research reveals religion as a fundamentally human endeavor, not passive reception of divine commands, but active construction of meaning systems that help communities navigate life's challenges. The persistence of polytheistic practices wasn't spiritual failure, it was evidence of religion's adaptive capacity. Understanding this process helps us appreciate why religious traditions have such remarkable staying power. They're not static doctrines, but living systems that evolve to meet changing needs while maintaining connections to transcendent meaning. The same forces that drove household religious diversity continue to operate today. Modern religious communities continue to adapt ancient traditions to contemporary needs while maintaining connections to transcendent meaning. The archaeological evidence shows that this has always been religion's strength: the ability to remain relevant while preserving ancient wisdom. Ready to explore how this religious evolution shaped the foundations of monotheism? The Warrior God reveals the complete story with detailed archaeological evidence. Get your copy today through the link in the description.